Hello, everyone. I'd like to go through the week 11 study questions. Obviously, these are a little different in that I just gave you quotes from Jonas and asked you to explain them, which is no easy task. I understand that. I mean, Jonas is getting into some pretty deep stuff and is not always the easiest writer to follow, but give it a shot, right? Number one, as transcendental, the object of the idea, immortality itself, is beyond proof. It is not an object of knowledge, but the idea of it is. So I guess the key there is, and this is a word that is a key philosophy word, transcendental. Um, the question of immortality is beyond our experience. It transcends our experience. That is, we are trying to understand something or know something that we can't actually have an experience of life after death. I mean, the very question about whether there can be anything like that. It's not something that, there are some questions that are not transcendental, like what color is a stop sign or who's the current president of the United States. Those are empirical questions. Can be answered through our experience, but something like the existence of God or whether human beings are free or whether we have an immortal soul, those are transcendental questions insofar as they can't actually be an object of experience. But then he says, but the idea of it is, that is, we can, the idea that people have, like what was the notion of immortality in medieval Europe or ancient Israel or modern America, right? The idea of immortality, of eternal life, that is something that we can think about. And so what he wants to do is to think about the current idea of, in the modern world. This is written in the 1960s, I believe. The idea we have of immortality, that is an object of possible experience. We can what idea do we have of it? What idea do others have of it? Number two, we face the terrible truth that the appearance is the reality and that there is nothing more real than what appears. He's trying there to characterize what he takes to be the modern philosophical outlook, that which is really anti-metaphysical, anti-transcendental. The idea that what you see is what you get, that the world reveals itself to us mostly through science in its entirety, and that there's no deep, hidden, unknown layer, you might say, which is really to say that the modern temper is not really about metaphysics. It's not really about reaching towards some great hidden answer, that what you see is what you get. And this has a lot of implications for our views of God and especially the afterlife. I think if I remember the context here, what he's basically saying about human life is that this is it. That there's no life to come. There's no dimension of reality that we will experience after death, that our earthly lives are our lives in their entirety. And obviously this would seem to rule out any notion of an afterlife. Number three, in moments of decision, when our whole being is involved, we feel as if acting under the eyes of eternity. So this is the part where he's trying to gain. He's trying to find some foothold for the idea of immortality in the modern worldview, what he calls the modern temper. Something in our experience that points towards, if not the idea of immortality, actually the idea of eternity. And that's what's important. That distinction between immortality and the eternal is quite important, because Jonas is similar to Hartshorne insofar as he doesn't believe in an afterlife in the traditional idea of it with novel experiences. He does, however, maybe share with Hartshorne the idea of somehow or another us connecting with the eternal. And that turns out to be this whole idea of the book of life, which is another strong connection with Hartshorne, obviously. So he gains that foothold of our connection with the eternal through our experience of moral decision, making moral decisions. And Jonas claims that when we are making those moral decisions, we have the feeling that we're being watched, and not just watched by other people, but watched by something else. And that the importance there is we feel as if there's a significance to our choices, which transcends the immediate earthly results of those choices. And that we, somehow or another, what we do will matter forever. And that's the key connection that he sees with the eternal. Number 4, not what lasts longest in our experience, but what lasts shortest and is intrinsically most adverse to lastingness may turn out to be that which binds the immortal to the immortal. And again, he's talking about acts of will, choice, which are very transient, right? Willing something to be, choosing something is a mental act which doesn't have any kind of material reality and is very fleeting, as he says. What is shortest and most adverse to lastingness, this act of mental choice, especially in moral situations, is ironically what may connect us with the eternal. Number 5, not the agents which must ever pass, but their acts enter into the becoming Godhead and indelibly form his never decided image. It's a very jam-packed sentence there. First of all, not the agents, but their acts. The agents, that's you and me, the doers. Agent in the general sense of somebody who acts. They don't last forever. But their acts, what we do, the idea is enter into eternity. That is, our choices, what we decide to do, are entered into this idea of the book of life. And remember, the book of life for Jonas is the book of the universe, you might say, and we add to it. It's not like with Hartshorne, the idea of the individual book of your life. It's the overall book of life. What we do, not us, we go, just as in Hartshorne, the idea of the active conscious being certainly comes to an end, but our acts, the results of our acts, the recording of our acts in reality, in this theological view of entering into the Godhead, they last forever. The second part of this, where he says the acts enter into the becoming Godhead and indelibly form his never decided image, is this very important aspect of Jonas's view, which again, as I said in the videos, is really a kind of a heresy, because the Orthodox view is that God cannot be affected by anything except his own activity, perhaps, but can't be affected by anything or anyone else. That's the Orthodox view. Jonas's view, which he's driven to take up for various reasons, is that what we do does change God, does affect God. That's the idea of the never decided image, that the kind of things that we do actually affect God, shape God, because they shape reality. Number 6, we can build and we can destroy, we can heal and we can hurt, we can nourish and we can starve divinity, we can perfect and we can disfigure its image, which is just going on that same point, the idea that what we do, the choices we human beings make through our free will, actually affect God and shape. They shape what's in the book of life, and therefore they shape God. Which again, I have to say, is if you're Orthodox, not just Orthodox Catholic or Christian, but Orthodox monotheist, I think it's Gnosticism, if you want to look that up. Don't quote me on that. Number 7, if the secret sympathy that connects our being with the transcendent condition works both ways, that is, God affects us and we affect God, then there will always be some resonance of that condition in ours, sometimes felt, though mostly not, and presently felt, perhaps, in a general malaise and the profound distemper of the contemporary mind. That's a difficult one to interpret. What I always took him to mean was that if God shapes us and we shape God and God is reality, then the acts of history actually affect the mood of the time. And the acts of recent history affect the mood of the reality that we live in. Remember that, and I might have mentioned this in the videos, is that he's living in a post-Holocaust world, post-World War II world, and this most traumatic event in modern history, World War II as a whole, in which, tens of millions of people perished. And then within the experience of World War II was, of course, the genocide of the European Jews, the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews, and then, of course, millions of others also perished in concentration camps. That events like that are bound to have an effect. That's what he says, the profound distemper of the contemporary mind. It's a very interesting, somewhat mystical, but a very interesting idea of history, which I think we can really learn a lot from. To tell you the truth, I think it's got some promise to it. This theory.